What if the Emperor never came to save Vader? What if instead... What if the Emperor never came to Mustafar to save Vader? What would have happened? In this scenario, we're going to go down a very different path, where the Force Ghost of Qui-Gon actually comes and helps Anakin. It goes down a path that I doubt you've ever seen before. It may stretch canon a bit. Oh well, it's a lot of fun. I actually enjoyed writing this. It might be one of my favorite fanfictions, so stick around, enjoy, and I hope you like this video. Please leave a like, subscribe, and yeah, thanks for watching, everybody. Anakin lay in the burning sand, skin melted off of him. He clings to the Force to keep himself alive. He is completely alone. His wife left him. Obi-Wan left him. The Jedi left him. Everyone he ever loved left him here, to die alone. But Anakin knows he only has to stay alive for a little longer. There is one person who has been by his side for his entire life. One person who understands him. One person who will help him. Anakin knows that his master will be here soon, and Anakin will get his revenge. He lays in the burning lava flats, waiting for his master. And on the other side of the galaxy, Palpatine and Yoda fight for a long time in the Senate chambers. Palpatine has gotten the upper hand and is about to send Yoda flying back with a blast of Force lightning, when he's struck by a dark feeling in the Force. He stumbles backwards. Young Skywalker is in peril. As he's thinking about Anakin, Yoda jumps up, slashes him across the arm. Palpatine couldn't move his right arm anymore. He grabbed his crimson saber and began fighting Yoda with one hand. He embraced the full power of the dark side, using his pain from the cut, the anger at Yoda, and the anger at his apprentice for distracting him. He slashes at Yoda, and the two continue to fight for what feels like forever. Yoda flipping over Palpatine, but unable to break through his defenses, as Palpatine blocks every strike. And he sees an opening, blasting Force lightning into the chest of Yoda. Yoda flies to the ground. He has lost, but he too felt a dark feeling in the Force. He may not have beaten Palpatine, but he can feel that Obi-Wan has won his battle. He may have battled for long enough to ensure Palpatine can never find Anakin. Palpatine and his clone troopers search the ground for Yoda, but they cannot find him, and Palpatine orders the search to stop. Yoda was gone. He recalled his feeling and knew Lord Vader was in danger. He reached out into the Force, but he could find no trace of him. Could the Chosen One truly have died to Obi-Wan? Palpatine decided that either Anakin would die for his failure, or he would find his own way home. He had to tend to his own sliced arm from Yoda before it was too late. So, he went off to his secret medical facility on Coruscant, without Darth Vader. Anakin continued to lay in the lava flats. Everything was wrong. How did this... The longer he waited, the more alone he was. Even the occasional lava droid passed him by, paying no attention. Everyone he knew had left him. No, that wasn't right. The dire position Anakin was in began to provide him with clarity. It was like the fire had burned him, down to his core, the core of light that would always reside inside of him. It was beginning to show itself once again, and Anakin tried to push it back down, to kill it once again, but he did not have the strength, and the clarity showed him the truth. Padme didn't leave him. Obi-Wan didn't leave him. The Jedi did not leave him. No one left him. He was the one who abandoned his wife, abandoned his child, his brother, his master, his Jedi friends. He was the one who killed them. Obi-Wan was right. He'd become the very thing he swore to destroy. A murderer, a traitor, a Sith Lord. He could barely stand to think of anything that he'd done, killing Windu, massacring the temple, the children. He wondered where Ahsoka was, if she'd survived. He wondered if Padme was alive. She was with Obi-Wan, which was probably for the best, Anakin thought as he continued to burn. He failed everyone he ever loved. He was supposed to be the greatest Jedi ever. If only he'd practiced a little bit more patience. He tried crawling up the flats, but continued to grab loose gravel and slip back down. Eventually, Anakin decided this might be his time. He flipped over, giving his mind to the Force, putting himself in a meditative state. Palpatine wasn't coming. No one was coming for him. He lay there, almost at peace with his own death, and a voice spoke to him. "Anakin, do you believe you are the chosen one?" Anakin's eyes jolted open and he looked around. Someone was here. Someone was speaking to him. He could barely get out a "hello" from his chest. He saw no one, and he gave himself back to the Force. He heard the voice again. "Anakin, your place in all of this is only beginning. You will help to destroy the Sith and bring balance." In the Force, Anakin acknowledged the voice now. The voice of Master Qui-Gon. Anakin asked how Qui-Gon was here, and how he knew that Anakin was still the chosen one. Qui-Gon responded, saying that he lived in the netherworld of the Force. There was no past, no future, no present, but the future was getting cloudy, getting darker as Palpatine took over. This was only the ever-changing Force that he was in. He was the first to learn of this power, and that was because of the will of the Force. The Force knew his place in all of this. It was Qui-Gon's destiny to die and become one with the Force, so he could guide Anakin down his own path. "Darth Sidious has become a parasite in the Force," Qui-Gon explained, beginning to control it, to change destiny, and that had to be corrected, with the help of the Chosen One. Anakin asked how, and Qui-Gon told him to let go. Anakin had given himself back to the light while lying here, and the Force was ready to take him, welcome him to the netherworld. The Force had created him, and would now let him fulfill his destiny in the afterlife, Qui-Gon told him. So Anakin did just that. He let go, and he gave himself to the Force. Darth Vader was dead, and the body of Anakin Skywalker faded away, disappearing. Anakin died, yet he still felt alive. He looked around. He was in his room in the Jedi Temple. He looked around and things were as they should be. Everything left like it was the last time he was here. He was confused. He'd just died. He was on Mustafar. How was he here now? And then he heard stomping in the distance, thousands of boots, and he knew. He was with the Force, watching his own worst nightmare. Anakin ran through the temple as he saw Jedi friends, some known, some unknown to him, get shot down. No one could see him, but he could see it all. Jedi dying, walls, statues crumbling, and then Anakin saw himself. He was fighting Singe Relic and two Padawans with extreme ease, a burning hatred in his eyes. Then, the Anakin in the temple made eye contact with him, and Anakin began free-falling out of nowhere. Now he felt sand. Tatooine. He saw Watto treating his mother poorly, then saw his mother get captured by the Sand People, and then watched her die. Again. And he saw himself cut down every last Sand person. Then he fell again. He saw Naboo where he got married. Again. Saw himself kill Count Dooku. He saw happy moments between him and Obi-Wan. Turned to Obi-Wan crying on his ship after cutting down Anakin. He fell, and he fell until he was somewhere he'd never seen before. A small medical room where he saw Padme, Obi-Wan, Yoda, Bail Organa, and Padme was giving birth. Anakin watched as not one, but two children were born, Luke and Leia. He heard Padme call out to him, but nobody here could see him. He wasn't sure if this was the present, the past, the future. He wasn't sure how long he'd been falling, going through the Force, but still he touched Padme with the Force, trying to use some sort of power to keep her alive. "There's still good in him," was the last thing Anakin heard from her before he fell again. And now he was with Qui-Gon, alone. Qui-Gon began to explain where he was, how he was a creation of the Force, therefore would be less limited by the constraints of the Neverworld. Qui-Gon explained that he would help train Luke and Leia to prepare them to destroy the Emperor. Anakin understood his new role. he would help raise and train his own children. On Polis Massa, Yoda meditates and listens for Qui-Gon. He needs guidance on where the Jedi go from here. And eventually, Qui-Gon comes to Yoda. He explains what has happened with Anakin, and Yoda said that he understands. He says he could almost feel Anakin when Padme was giving birth. And Qui-Gon requests to Yoda that they all go to Alderaan, hidden away in a small area that Bail puts together. Yoda can never show himself, as the galaxy knows who he is, but they can all go away together, because there is no Darth Vader that will be looking for them. And so, over the next few days, it's all organized. Senator Bail Organa hides them away in a small neighborhood in the forest, a neighborhood meant for only these people going into exile. Yoda, Obi-Wan, the two children, and their mother, Padme, who somehow survived childbirth. Yoda would have a hut similar to the one he had on Dagobah, while Padme would raise Luke and Leia in a secluded house in the forest. Obi-Wan was nearby as well, but he lived alone. Everyone except Yoda could occasionally travel, go into the city, but had to be extremely discreet. And the beginning of this exile would begin and go on for 10 years. The Empire would exist and take over the galaxy, with the Inquisitors leading the hunt for the remaining Jedi, led not by Darth Vader, but in 10 years' time, a new person would emerge to lead them. Without Vader, the Emperor had a bit of a void when it came to having a menacing leader, but he had contingencies set up for this. He had been practicing his cloning ideas since the Clone Wars, a little over a decade now, and his finest creation was ready to help him rule. When Anakin Skywalker had first fought Count Dooku on Geonosis, he'd lost his hand. Palpatine had taken this hand, and he'd been experimenting on it, experimenting with cloning technology, to clone his greatest achievement ever, Darth Vader. And about 10 years after Vader died, Sidious had created a new version. But the consequences of cloning Force-sensitive individuals was no easy task. This version of Vader was unstable, explosive, engulfed only in the dark side of the Force. This was good for Palpatine, and in order to ensure this clone could not kill him, he had the clone put into a giant, menacing suit of armor that had restrictions that Palpatine could easily destroy. But it looked extremely intimidating, like a super soldier stormtrooper, and he was powerful. He would be known around the galaxy as the Emperor's Hand, doing whatever was needed to keep the galaxy in line with the Empire, no matter how twisted or evil the task was. Now on Alderaan, 10 years had passed. In those years, Anakin had begun communicating with Obi-Wan, Luke, and Leia. The children were 10 years old now, and the three had told Padme that Anakin was around. She was overjoyed, despite not being able to actually see him. She would sometimes talk to the open air, hoping Anakin was around, and he would visit, despite knowing that she could not see him. Obi-Wan and Anakin had become great friends again, as Anakin had become much wiser. He would even reach out to Ahsoka from time to time, guiding her on her own journey through the Force. He was reaching his full potential, despite not being in the living world any longer. As the Chosen One, someone the Force created, he had great control over his abilities as a Force ghost. But he could not find Palpatine, who had become so far gone down the dark side that Anakin was completely blocked out. But after these 10 years, Anakin, Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, and Yoda could all feel a new presence in the Force, one of pure darkness, and they knew it was time to train the children. So Luke and Leia would quickly become extremely strong in the Force, guided by their father. He taught them about the Force, his own mistakes, his own triumphs, and they would be taken to Ilum with Ahsoka during their training to create their own lightsabers. Leia had blue, while Luke had green. And over the next 10 years now, they would train together with Anakin as their guide into Force knowledge that no one else could teach them. Anakin was able to give them strength, putting his own power into them when needed, and the two became extremely powerful. Around age 20, they were experts at concealing their presence in the Force, They'd been left alone as Jedi in exile, waiting for the time to be right. And the two Jedi would often spar against each other, moving like no Jedi before, extremely quick, power beyond even Anakin at this age. They were ready to face the Emperor and his challenges. Anakin would attempt to see the future, but he never could anymore. When he tried to look, it was all a black void of the darkness. Palpatine truly had control over the Force, spreading like a parasite, to control the Force like he controls the galaxy. And one day, while training in the middle of the day, everything went dark. It was like the sun had been turned off. And when the Jedi looked to the sky, the sun was gone, covered by some sort of moon. "That's no moon," Obi-Wan said to the group. Emperor Palpatine had spent his time as Emperor, ruling the galaxy, overseeing his clone of Anakin, and overseeing his greatest achievement to this point, the Death Star. Upon completion, he boarded the space station with Darth Vader, and they took off for the planet that would make an excellent example of what happens when you disobey the Empire: Alderaan. Alderaan was a thorn in the Emperor's side, with Senator Organa having an unnecessarily large voice in the Senate. That would happen no longer, as the planet would be destroyed and the Senate disbanded with the threat of this new superweapon. Back on the surface, the Jedi rushed to their ship. For the first time, all of them were leaving together. Luke and Leia, led by Yoda, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka, they all boarded their ship and took off for the space station, for the battle of their destiny. Padme sat alone in the house, crying as she watched her children run off to battle. It was the same feeling she had watching Anakin do the same thing all those years ago in the Clone Wars, and as she sat, she swore she could actually feel Anakin here with her. She wiped her tears away and smiled, knowing he was here. Anakin sat with Padme. He knew she couldn't feel her, yet she cracked a smile and looked right at him. It was like their connection spread even through the Force. Anakin smiled and allowed his spirit to find his children in their most fateful moment. Qui-Gon with him, the two of them, to the ship, to be with the children. And as the Emperor watched from his throne room, he felt a change in the Force. The Jedi were here on Alderaan, and he felt them coming. Good. This would be their end. He called Darth Vader and his 10 royal guards on the station, all to his throne room. They would let the Jedi come to them, kill them here, let them die knowing the planet was going to explode. The ship carrying the Jedi was met with very little resistance, as a tractor beam carried them aboard the station. A final duel between Jedi and Sith was bound to happen. As the Jedi got off their ship, there were mysteriously no stormtroopers around. Instead, one royal guard beckoned to them. It was like Palpatine was inviting them to a dinner party, rather than a final duel. How arrogant of them, the Jedi thought. The Jedi took an elevator to a room that opened, and there he was, the Emperor in all his glory, staring down at them with a wicked smile. And he continued to look at them, but soon his smile faded. Behind Yoda, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka stood two young Jedi. Sidious could feel them, and understood them to be the children of Anakin Skywalker, and they were powerful. As his smile faded, he had his own trick up his sleeve, and he beckoned to someone behind him. Out came a man wearing a black suit of armor. He removed his helmet, and in front of the Jedi stood Anakin Skywalker. The Emperor cackled as the Jedi looked stunned. How was this possible? Anakin was gone. He was with them on Alderaan. He'd been there the whole time. But the Jedi looked at this version of Anakin, and they knew this was not their version. This was not their Anakin. Eyes bloodshot red, face scarred and ruined from the cloning and the dark side ruin that took over him. A powerful being of pure evil. But they knew that this was not Anakin. Still, it was his face. One by one, they ignited their sabers. Palpatine laughed as he said they would die, and their beloved Alderaan would die right after. Lightsabers ignited between the Jedi and Sith, staffs of the guards at the ready. The battle began in abrupt fashion. Within the throne room of the Death Star, the air crackled with the clash of lightsabers. Luke Skywalker, fueled by his resolve, led the charge, his green saber slicing through the darkness with precision. By his side, Leia matched his every move, her blue lightsaber, a radiant beacon of hope amidst this chaos. The two of them wielding the power of the Chosen One, together. And the wise and ancient Jedi Master Yoda, moving with astounding agility, leapt and twirled amidst it all, his emerald lightsaber deflecting blaster bolts from the guards and striking with incredible speed. He was old, but he knew this to be his final battle. He gave it everything he had, striking down the guards one by one. And Ahsoka, a seasoned warrior with her twin white lightsabers, fought valiantly besides the Jedi, her every move a testament to her skill, to her determination. She was here to avenge the fall of her master. Obi-Wan, a bastion of wisdom, of experience, fought with unwavering resolve like his student Luke, his blue lightsaber a blur of calculated strikes. But the dark side power in this room was relentless, and the Sith's mastery of the Force against these three Jedi, who'd become much older, was formidable. Despite their valiant efforts, the Jedi began to face overwhelming odds. In the midst of the fierce battle, Obi-Wan found himself engaged in a duel with Darth Vader. Their blades clashed with fiery intensity, each strike resonating with the weight of their shared history. But only Obi-Wan felt this emotion in the fight. For Vader, he was simply fighting an old man, and with a sudden burst of dark side energy, Vader unleashed a devastating blow that cut through Obi-Wan's defenses, piercing his heart. Suddenly, Obi-Wan's body crumpled to the ground and faded, his spirit transcending into the Force. Luke and Leia, engaged in a duel with the Emperor, screamed in agony and fear as they watched their masters fall. Ahsoka Tano, her agile movements weaving through the chaos still, fought valiantly against the relentless onslaught of the guards. However, overwhelmed by their sheer numbers, she found herself momentarily vulnerable. In a swift, precise strike, a blade found its mark, piercing her, sending her crashing to the floor. She tried to get back up, but behind her, Vader electrocuted her with all of his power. As her life force ebbed away, Ahsoka's eyes met Luke's from across the battlefield, imparting a final flicker of hope, before she, too, joined the eternal Force, her body fading. Yoda now, the final Jedi Master here, harnessed the Force with remarkable power, his emerald blade a blur of calculated strikes, still at his age. But yet, the combined darkness of Darth Vader and Palpatine was too much to overcome, and with an evil cackle, Palpatine channeled a torrent of Sith lightning towards Yoda, overwhelming him. Despite his resilience, Yoda could not withstand this onslaught. His body convulsed, and with the sheer power of the dark side, his essence dissolved into the Force. With the three Jedi Masters gone, Palpatine pushed Luke and Leia hard against the wall, knocking the wind out of them both. Palpatine laughed as he made his way with Vader to the fallen Jedi. But once again his laugh ceased as he realized there were no bodies, only robes of the fallen Jedi. For a moment, he wondered how this was possible, and he reached into the Force. Despite their deaths, he could still feel Yoda, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka. But he also felt Anakin. Not his clone Anakin, but the Anakin from the Clone Wars. The powerful, hopeful, light side Anakin. Luke and Leia lay still against the wall, shocked by the loss of their masters, defeated. But then, they heard them all speak. Luke and Leia could hear their masters still with them. Then they heard Anakin. And then they saw Anakin in front of them. Their father smiled, turning to Palpatine. Palpatine's face was beyond fear. Before him stood Anakin Skywalker. And as he faded away, Luke and Leia felt his power take over inside of them like never before. They had the full power of the Force. Father, son, and daughter, the Chosen One. They rose, lightsabers ignited, and charged the Sith. Within this cold metallic room of the Death Star, the air crackled with energy as the four faced off. Luke Skywalker, his blue saber radiating, engaged Vader in a fierce duel. Their blades clashed with a resounding force, each strike echoing through the chamber. Luke tapped into his immense powers now, drawing upon the Jedi. And Leia, her own green saber shining brightly, locked eyes with Palpatine, the embodiment of the dark side of the Force. With her impressive moves, Leia channeled her connection to the Force, tapping into its depths to unleash devastating Force attacks. Bolts of energy crackled around her as she deflected Palpatine's lightning, countering with her own surges of pure light side power. And as the battle raged on, the Death Star trembled under the raw power of them all. Luke and Leia pushed themselves to their limits, utilizing their mastery of the Force and the Jedi spirit to devastating effect. They combined their abilities, seamlessly blending their powers to form an unstoppable force of good. The sheer intensity of their attacks overwhelmed the Sith, crackling through their defenses. Leia now pressed her advantage against Palpatine. She summoned the very essence of the Force, creating a shield of light, deflecting his malevolence. And with a surge of power, Leia unleashed a wave of pure energy, overwhelming the Sith Lord, sending him sprawling backwards. In a final act of defiance against the dark side, Luke and Leia combined their powers, focusing their energy on both Vader and Palpatine. And finally, the sheer magnitude of their united force caused the Sith's defenses to crumble once and for all. With an explosion of light, the dark presence of Vader and Emperor Palpatine was eradicated in an explosion of the light side of the Force, leaving only echoes of their evil behind. Luke and Leia stood in the aftermath, their breaths heavy, hearts full of triumph. They'd achieved the impossible. They harnessed the full power of the Force, full power of their father, of their masters, and they defeated the Sith with unparalleled strength. The Death Star quaked beneath their feet as they embraced their shared destiny, and with the dark aura of the Force gone, Anakin, Yoda, Ahsoka, Obi-Wan, and Qui-Gon emerged before them. The parasite in the Force was eradicated, and only the children of the Chosen One remained. In the time that this battle had taken place, a fleet of rebel fighters had arrived in time to take on the Death Star. Without Vader and the Emperor, the Death Star crew was in complete disarray and could not fight back in time. As Luke and Leia departed, an explosion of the Death Star was felt across the planet. The Emperor, the Empire, was on life support, and the rebellion was able to step in. The Jedi would return to their mother, and the galaxy would rebuild in the aftermath of this battle. Alright, that's where we're going to end today. Once again, thanks for watching. I do hope you enjoyed. I think it was a path that I don't know if you've ever seen before. I've never seen anything like this, so let me know what you thought. And yeah, thanks for watching. Subscribe, leave a like, and I'll see you in the next video.